Hi, welcome to Hollywood. This is Josh.
This is Carter. Welcome to our special tribute edition. It's been almost 1 year since this happened.
Yeah, the day we'll post this on the anniversary. It's a couple days beforehand, but it's the 1 year anniversary death of the Ultimate Warrior.
Yeah, one of the biggest tragedies in wrestling that happened. But he almost, I like to say, he went out on top.
Definitely, he. For those that don't know, he went to the WWE Hall of Fame on a Saturday. Was at WrestleMania on Sunday. Was at Monday Night Raw on Monday, and died the very next day on the Tuesday.
And the weird thing about it, the speech he gave that Monday, in his speech he talked about, even after he's gone, how his spirit is going to live on in the hearts of everyone who believes in him. And it was so eerie that he kind of gave his own eulogy.
They even made like CNN and stuff about how he gave his own eulogy. It was just bizarre.
Yeah, I mean, the poor guy unfortunately dropped dead of a heart attack in the hotel parking lot. And it was very bizarre, and it also proves that everyone has to pay the price for what they've done. And his heart pretty much gave out from years of steroids, unfortunately, and a lot of bodybuilding and putting a lot of strain on his body. And you pay the price for things like that, and a lot of wrestlers have. But Warrior got the chance to kind of give his own eulogy and make amends with a lot of people.
He would have been gone from the company for 18 years. I don't think anybody's had that big of a gap. Maybe Bruno Sammartino, but
I think Sammartino would be a bigger gap. But that was
so probably second to only Bruno then.
Yeah, and it was a big falling out between him and Vince. And to Hunter Hearst Helmsley's credit, Triple H was able to reestablish the connection and make it a big thing. Warrior was on the face of WWE game that year. He brought him as a public figure, and it was a good deal. And, it looked like Warrior was really happy in his life. He had his wife and two very beautiful daughters, and just gives his own eulogy, and then unexpectedly, massive heart attack just walking to the car in his hotel parking lot. Not all of us get to do that. We don't get to give our final words in such an eloquent way.
On live television.
Live television, no less. And he got that. And it was just, I'd like to think that he felt somewhere inside him that his time was up.
Yeah. Because he would appear that weekend, like, really red. Like, he was tanned, but he wasn't, like, red. Like, he seemed, like, really red and sweaty, like, the whole weekend, to me.
Like, something was wrong. And I think he probably would have gone to the doctor, but he wanted to push through this very special weekend. Yeah. And Dana Warrior, which those of you who don't know, the man, Jim Hellwig, literally changed his name to Warrior.
Yeah. I think, I don't know for sure, but I think that has to do with it. He didn't have a really good relationship with his father, so.
He didn't have a good relationship with his father, or he started his own family, so his wife is Diana Warrior and his two Warrior children.
Yeah.
Which is awesome. They're going to carry that legacy around and know what that means to be a warrior. Yeah. And a lot of people can say what they want about the Warrior. I was never a huge Warrior fan when I was a kid. I'll say that right now. I was always a bigger fan of DiBiase, Jake the Snake, Ric Flair, Undertaker. But Warrior was always there in my childhood with me. It was a very large presence, especially WrestleMania. Was it 6?
6 he won the world title.
It was WrestleMania 6, where he won the world title against Hulk Hogan.
A time when nobody beat Hulk Hogan clean. Absolutely nobody.
It's very true. Nobody beat Hogan clean. And it was a clean victory, and it was passing the torch that Hogan just didn't want to give up yet.
Ultimate Warrior is the character the wrestler that captured my attention and got me watching.
A lot of people. I mean, he was big nobody had muscles like him, and nobody had that energy.
Just like the bright colors, and just like he was like off the
Right.
pages of like a comic book. Like you could see him beside like Captain America and Iron Man. You'd have like Ultimate Warrior.
Yeah, I mean, when he ran to the ring, that nobody else ran to the ring. Everybody walked and took their time on the entrance. No, that music hit dun, dun, dun.
Yeah.
And he just hit the ring, running full force and just shaking the ropes, madness, out of control. And it was great for its time. Warrior was definitely something nobody else had ever seen in time. Amazing presence. Not the greatest wrestler.
He got better. He got better towards the end.
He got better, but he was also very limited in his own movement just because of his size.
But I mean, if you look at the WrestleMania 6 match with Hogan, neither one of the guys were great workers.
No, they're not.
But they put an excellent match on together.
They did. They did exactly what they needed to do. And I thought the finish was really clean with Hogan missing leg drop. Warrior just springboards and hits the splash.
1, 2, 3.
It was very quick and very special. And Warrior has always been a huge staple in the minds of every wrestling fan from that era. Guys, you're my age. I would say the 30-something and older group.
The kids that grew up in the Hulkamania era.
Yeah, that was our introduction.
Yeah, and then the next year at WrestleMania 7, he had that epic match with Macho King Randy Savage. That was awesome. I mean, I'm sure most of that was on Randy, but Warrior had to. He wasn't a broomstick out there, you know what I mean?
He was.
So he played his part very well.
Warrior was in a class of his own, and we miss him to this day. He was a great presence, but out of the tragedy has come some good. Diana Warrior has started a foundation in his name.
Yeah, she gave a speech at the Hall of Fame this year, and she was so strong, man. She had to have like memories of last year where she was there with her husband, and this year he was gone, man. But I had to give it up to her. She was really impressively strong with her speech.
Yeah, and she's a very strong woman and very well spoken. Surprisingly comfortable in front of a crowd.
Yeah, she did really well. Like I'm not sure what her background is, but Dana Warrior was very well spoken.
Yeah, very well spoken. She was a great kid. Their kids seemed very, very nice. And when they dressed for it, how teenagers like to dress nowadays, they looked very beautiful and very conservative in their look. Yeah. And which I really appreciated. It was like, here's the thing, my dad, we need to dress properly and be respectful. And thank God they have that.
They always came across as classy. Dana and her daughters, as classy girls.
Yeah, well raised, well parented kids. So Dana Warrior has now started the Warrior Foundation for charity, which is really something great. But also they started the Warrior Award this year to help induct non-Hall of Fame, non-wrestlers into the Hall of Fame for being like a super fan.
Well, it's not just fans. They said they're also going into anybody that embodies the spirit of the Warrior. Basically any non-wrestler. So it could be, it could be a fan. It could be someone in the office, Yeah.
And this year they inducted, Connor the Crusher, which, for all of you listening, if you don't know the story of Connor the Crusher, please YouTube it and grab a box of tissues because you will cry your eyes out. Believe me, there is not a dry eye anywhere watching that story. And I even got choked up this year when Connor's father gave his acceptance speech because, unfortunately, Connor passed away shortly after WrestleMania 30. He gave himself enough will to live to see Daniel Bryan win the title of his favorite wrestler, and it just choked me up. And as soon as his father gave that speech, I ran to my kid's bedroom and started hugging my kids while they were asleep. And that's what it did to me. And we need to take time out to remember that there's a lot of bad out in the world. There's a lot of bad, and a lot of bad things happen to good people.
And a lot of times, like your problems, like if you think about, something bad happens to you, there's a lot of people going through a lot worse stuff.
Yeah, and I try to keep that in
Yeah.
mind myself every day. You know, I'm struggling with something, and I go, you know what? There are people out there way worse off than I am, and I need to be thankful every day for what I have.
Yeah.
You know, I have healthy children. I have a healthy friendships. I have a great girlfriend. You know, and I'll make it through because only death is final. You know, what we're going through right now, any pains, we'll get through it. We'll be strong. And it's one of the lessons that Dana Warrior has kind of imparted on us, that you can be strong and get up and keep fighting.
Yeah, and it was really impressive that Warrior raised his family so well, and it's going to keep his legacy. I mean, sadly, a lot of the wrestling industry, there's not a lot of good dads, and that, like, at that level, especially during that time, I would, because they're on the road a lot. A
Yeah,
lot of the
and it's
times,
still right
substance
there.
abuse problems. I mean, you hear all sorts of horror stories about um, pro wrestling
Being
dads.
raised by a pro wrestler father. You're right, and there are a lot of horror stories. Even the Rhodes family was a bit uh,
Splintered, I guess you could say.
splintered. A bit splintered for many years because Mick Foley has done a excellent job
Yeah,
raising his
yeah,
children.
Mick definitely. Roddy
Owen,
Piper,
another big.
is a great father.
Yeah, I think really, I think Piper kind of waited though until his
He had like
um,
5, 6 kids, something like that. Like, he had quite a lot.
oldest is like in his 20s, so Piper kind of
Yeah.
waited until after his heyday.
But I mean, there's good fathers, but there's a lot. I mean, you hear for like every good father, you'll hear of like 5 horror stories. Like,
Jake Roberts makes no qualms
yeah,
about it. He was a bad father, trying to make up for it now, and he was raised. His father was a wrestler, and his father treated him very poorly. Same thing goes with Scott Hall. A lot of guys had a very rough time being a dad and not raising their kids right, and they horribly regret it now. But Warrior seemed to genuinely care
his daughters were
about
his
his kids.
world.
Yeah. Now, luckily, he waited until after his run to have
Yeah, I
children.
think that helps.
That does help, and a lot of guys in the world now, I'm seeing this, are realizing what happens if you have kids while you're on the
Yeah,
road. A lot of them are waiting until they're done, or they're at least part timers. Brock Lesnar, even Cena has says he's not looking to have kids with his wife right now until they're done.
well, even like Roddy Piper would take off like a year or two at a time. You know what I mean? I
Yeah,
think after '88, he was pretty much part time.
he was. He was part after '88. I mean, his after he had his hip surgery and everything, he knew he wasn't the same. His body
But
wasn't the
they
same.
lived it
So
really well, that movie. He become like a
mm,
pop culture icon at that
he
point.
still
Yeah, he
is.
still is. But I'm saying that he didn't need to be on the road financially. I don't think. Um, you know, so he could be there with his family. I think that helps a lot. But
Warrior was he kind of turned in. He may have been a little off in beliefs, and um, sometimes if you ever read his blogs, he was quite off the rails for a long time.
he was he had his point of view, and if you didn't agree with it, screw you, was his attitude.
That was his attitude, and props to him for having that
Yeah.
attitude. I remember one of my favorite lines is, and people might find this offensive, but whatever. I thought it was a funny line. It was on his blog right after Katrina happened. He posted on his first line on his blog was, "Just got back from New Orleans. The fishing's fine." And I laughed. I thought it was funny, but then again, I find jokes in poor taste
Yeah,
funny.
it's dark humor.
Humor, and we need a little dark humor sometimes to bring light to the darkness.
But Warrior had a tremendous run, especially through the late '80s to about '91.
One night.
Because everybody's heard of Hulk Hogan, and Warrior reached for about a year reached that apex, and there's not many people that can say that.
There isn't, and one of my favorite Warrior moments is when he teamed with Macho Man and the Ultimate Maniac.
Oh, they were ridiculous. It's like they tried to like outdo the ridiculousness of each other or something.
Yeah, it was insane, and it was fun.
Yeah.
Because both of those guys were high-intensity personalities. Very high-intensity.
I can't even imagine their conversations backstage.
Oh, yeah, brother, we're going to do this. Speak to me, Randy.
Because I've heard Savage was pretty much... If Macho Man was 10 on the intensity scale, Randy himself was probably at least 8 or 9.
That's what I've heard. Like, there was no off switch for the guy. And the same thing with Warrior.
Yeah.
He was always a very intense individual. And he's very serious about himself.
But a lot of guys were big Ultimate Warrior fans.
Yeah, Batista was a huge Ultimate Warrior fan.
CM Punk, even though their styles are completely different, was a big Ultimate Warrior fan. I think Daniel Bryan, believe it or not.
Daniel Bryan was, Jericho was. Jericho was a big Warrior and Hulk Hogan fan. Edge was a big Hulk Hogan fan. But also had a lot of love for the Warrior, too. And during that age, if you loved Hogan, you also loved Warrior and versa.
Yeah. At WrestleMania 6, he had two camps, because no two good guys had ever gone up to each other at that level before.
Yeah, face on face for a championship at a high-level event. Really hard to pull off, but they did it well.
Because they were 50-50. You can't have 75%, for one guy, 25% for the other, because it's not going to help both guys. No,
and everybody knew at that time it was Warrior's time to shine. Like, Hogan had been around for a very long time.
I think he was going to do movies or something again.
I think Suburban Commando was being made. Yeah. It was time for the Warrior. And, Warrior was a great spokesman. He just had a huge falling out with Vince. And I think, some of it was Warrior's ego.
Some of it's not putting up with Vince's crap, honestly.
Yeah,
I think Warrior had the same attitude as like CM Punk, in that they can only take so much BS, and then they just have their fill and they just push away.
Yeah, that's very possible. I mean, because Vince is a bullhead guy, and it is his company. Yeah. So you can either do what he wants you to do, or you can leave. And some guys are just like, all right, I'll leave.
Yeah.
Punk left. Stone Cold left.
And Steve Austin's sort of that personality too. It's kind of funny because Punk was a big fan of Austin and the Warrior, and sort of left in the same manner.
You're right.
So.
But time heals all wounds. San Martino made up with him. Warrior made up with Vince. Stone Cold obviously made up with Vince.
It's just a matter of time for CM Punk.
Hopefully. I mean, but also Punk's got that kind of personality where he's just like, I don't need to right now. It's not coming anytime soon. He's happy in the training for the UFC.
Yeah.
And AJ's now quit.
Yeah, AJ just left the company.
But the Warrior, we miss him.
Nothing but props to the Ultimate Warrior. I just finished recently playing in the new video game. They have DLC that goes through a lot of Warrior's highlights, like his feud with Ravishing Rick Rude. And there was I'd forgotten all about it, but he had a little feud with The Undertaker, and they had a body bag match at a live event.
I remember that one.
But for his short, for the short span he was there, it made made so many memories.
Yeah.
And not many people could say that they did that. I mean, Goldberg comes to mind. But of guys that just showed up, exploded, and then just sort of faded. But they won't be forgotten, you know what I mean? Ultimate Warrior you still see merchandise sales. I've heard WWE has a great relationship with his widow. So, I think they'll keep his memory going for a while.
They will, and like I said before, out of the tragedy is coming the light. Dana Warrior is doing her best to carry on and still, keep his name relevant.
And WWE Network helps too.
It
Because
does.
anybody can pop on to see old stuff. Kids. Dude, if I was like 15 years old, something like that, could you imagine having access to everything?
Network when I was that age.
Man.
Because right at that age, we started going through the Monday Night Wars. That was the beginning of 15. So having
I would never gone to school.
Like, what do you have? I've got the WWE Network. I don't need school anymore. I'm good.
Man, kids are lucky.
But
yeah, he'll keep. Those moments will stay iconic. Him lifting up both the Intercontinental and the World Title after WrestleMania 6 and the fireworks going off. That will be embedded in video footage for decades to come.
Not just to have. Not everybody gets that moment in WrestleMania to truly shine. That was certainly a moment.
So,
everything shown on him.
A WrestleMania moment for sure.
Yeah, not everybody gets that, but Warrior definitely got it. So, the Warrior, if you're listening, we do miss you. And if any of you guys out there, please just look up Dana Warrior, look up the Warrior Foundation. We miss the Warrior, but not everyone's be the eulogy.
Yeah, and he won't be forgotten for. Well, with video footage, stuff like WWE Network, probably never forgotten.
Yeah.
So, rest in peace, Warrior. Thank you for your energy and your entertaining us all those years.
Definitely.
All right.
Good night, everybody, and I hope you have a great night. And just keep the Warrior in your mind on this day.
Keep a Warrior and love your family. Take care.
Good night.